Hey, this is a video about Pennsylvania child support and how it's calculated. To start with, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just somebody who's been through this process personally. I was going through a divorce and my lawyer called me up one day to say my ex filed for child support, and he ran a calculation for how much I would probably end up paying. He was able to run that calculation because the law is basically a mathematical formula, and there's calculators out there. You can just Google it yourself to determine how much you probably owe. But it's really just like doing your taxes. It's a lot of math. There's very little wiggle room. It does not matter how good your lawyer is. It does not matter what judge you get. At the end of the day, the math is the math, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So what I'm going to do is I made this spreadsheet that it reflects what's shown in this Pennsylvania state law. It's rule number 1910.16-1, and it's a 34-page PDF document that you can download, and it shows you the same basic breakdown as the spreadsheet does. So to start with, for this example, we have parent A who makes $160,000 a year and parent B makes $120,000 a year. We're going to assume that they have two kids and they're sharing custody 50-50. So to begin with, we have the taxes. So for federal, I assume the standard deduction and each parent deducting one of the kids. State income tax is 3% in Pennsylvania. Local income tax I have is 1%, and Social Security is, I believe, about 6%. This ends up being their net annual salary. We divide all these numbers by 12 to get monthly. The reason for that is that the law talks about income on a monthly basis, not an annual basis. So when you do get to the law, line 1, and again, this is very similar to doing your taxes. There's just lines with information you enter or calculations that you do to fill out each line, and it kind of guides you to the end result. So line 1 is the gross monthly income, which is the income before deductions. Line 2 is your deductions, which in this case is all the federal, state, local, Social Security tax. It's everything that involuntarily comes out of your paycheck. Union dues also qualify. Anything that is voluntary that you take out of your paycheck, like your 401k, IRA, health insurance, stuff like that, that is not an eligible deduction. So more or less your deductions are your taxes. So you take your gross pay in line 1, you take your deductions. Line 3 is your net income per month for each parent. Line 4 is a monthly adjustment that if you're not already in monthly, you adjust there. So in our case, nothing changes. Line 5 is the combined total monthly net income. So you take both parents' monthly net income, you add them, you get a number. And this is the theoretical household income if both parents were still together. And what you do with this number is the law has what's called a basic child support obligation. And this is a number that is based on how wealthy the family is and how many kids they have. And it's supposed to be the theoretical cost of raising a kid on a day-to-day basis. So we're talking about their food, their shelter, their clothing, stuff like that. It does not include education. It does not include healthcare. It does not include any hobbies, extracurricular activities, stuff like that. That's all handled separately, and we'll talk about that in a bit. This is more or less keeping the kid alive. So in this case, the law is almost like taxes. There's different income brackets, and there's tables and stuff, but for the income level that we're at, it says that the amount spent on kids should be $26.77 per month plus 11.6% above $12,698. What that calculates to is $32.37. This is how much theoretically the parents should be spending on the kids per month. Again, just for food, shelter, and clothing. Next line, line 7, is the net income expressed as a percentage. So we're talking 56% to 44%. Parent A is making a decent amount more than parent B. Not crazy. Parent B is still making $120,000 per year, but parent A is making decent chunk more than parent B. So line 8, more or less, I feel they're almost mocking you when they include this line, because this line goes nowhere. It's just a number shown as a reference as far as I can tell. It's each parent's monthly share of the basic child support obligation. So you take this, $3,200 spent on the kids, and you just take the percent breakdown of what each parent should be responsible for. This would be fair. I up until this point, I thought the law kind of made sense. So what I thought would happen is that you have this 32-37 that parents are responsible for total, and if you have 50% custody, both parents would be spending theoretically $1,618 per kid. So obviously the higher earner had a higher obligation of $1,821. Lower earner had a lower obligation of $1,416. So parent A should be giving parent B $202 per month, so that the total spend evens out to what these numbers are. That is not the case. Again, these numbers, you write them down and you don't ever see them again. It's just Pennsylvania is almost mocking you by including this line. Line 9 is where things really start to get squirrely. It's the percent time spent with children. For whatever reason, it assumes that the higher earner spends 30% of their time with the kids. They acknowledge the fact that having the kids in your custody costs money. So they're trying to almost make an adjustment, but it is not. There's a simpler way to account for this without what they do, and what they do doesn't make any sense. So you take the percentage of time the higher earner spends with the children, in this case 50% custody. They say to subtract 30% from that, so you get down to 20%. So what they do is they say you have a 20% deduction, basically. So from this 56% that the higher earner originally had, it was down to 36%, which doesn't make any sense. This is where the equation just starts going off the rails, because the next line, what they do is they say that the obligor's adjusted share of the basic monthly support obligation is 36% times that number, the total overall spend. So parent A has to spend 50% out of pocket on the kids while they have them, and they also have to give parent B 36% of the overall cost of raising the kids. So in our case, it would equate to $1,173. So that parent A, the higher earner, ends up spending 50% out of pocket themselves on the kids, and they have to give parent B 36%. So at the end of the day, parent A is responsible for 86% of the cost of raising a kid, and parent B is responsible for 14%. And again, if the law was fair, if line 8 meant anything, that number should be about $200. Instead, it's closer to $1,200. And that's just the way it's written in the law. You can look at the PDF document yourself. That's how it works. Line 10 is a chance to add in healthcare expenses, education expenses, anything else. What my lawyer recommended was that we don't include that in this section, because it all becomes set in stone with the courts, and healthcare prices are always changing, daycare costs are always changing, hobbies come and go. So anytime those numbers change, you'd have to go back to the court if you wanted to get them captured. So generally, I think that these are mostly held off to the side. You can make them set in stone with the court. I think usually it's addressed as part of the divorce agreement more than anything. So then, speaking of which, the divorce agreement, but what they do is they take the parents' percentage incomes again, and they act like the child support doesn't exist at all. So parent A still theoretically has 56% of the income, parent B has 44% of the income. So I just have some sample expenses. For medical expenses, I have $625 a month. That includes healthcare premiums and anything that might come up on a given month. Daycare, we have $1,500 per month. Extracurriculars, I have $500, and what that equates to is $2,625 total per month. So it's a little bit more straightforward. on what each parent's responsible for. Parent A would be responsible for 56% of this $2,600. Parent B would be responsible for 24%. So this is pretty straightforward. There's not the shell game that is going on in the written law. But going to the net result, here's the third way that the higher earner kind of gets screwed, is that the taxes don't change. All this money that we're talking about that parent A gives parent B, parent A pays the taxes on it and gives it to parent B tax-free. So these tax numbers are still the same as they were at the very beginning. Parent A makes $160, parent B makes $120. Parent A takes home $118 after taxes, parent B $92. Break it down to monthly. Parent A is about $10,000 a month. Parent B is about $77,000. So you have that $1,173 payment that parent A gives parent B, and both parents spend their prorated portions of the other child care expenses. And what ends up happening at the end is that parent A ends up spending, or they end up having less disposable income than parent B. And again, there's three reasons why this happens. Number one is this number, the 1173, which is set, I still don't understand how that number comes up with, but the law says that parent A owes parent B 1173. And then on the remaining expenses, it's based on the pre-transfer percentages. So parent A and parent B end up being pretty close to 50-50 right here. And then this this acts like it's not 50-50. And then also you have the taxes, the fact that parent A is paying all the taxes on all these dollars that we're talking about. So between those three things that all conveniently go in the lower earner's favor, parent A ends up making less than parent B, even though their gross salary is $40,000 more per year. And again, it's all straight math from this law, Rule 1910.16-1 of the Pennsylvania state law, that it doesn't matter what judge you have, it does not matter what lawyer you have, it just matters what the law says. And as of now, this is what the law says.